we'll gather round, feel the love compound. Blue elephant is strong.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So,
Together we
I want to talk
belong.
to you about one of the simplest things that you can do that's going to make a huge difference in your artwork. And we are going to be using this cute little bird's nest mold that I found, and these two little birds, and some of Let's Resin's mica powder. Now, first, one of the things that can make a big difference in your piece, just straight off, is putting highlights and lowlights and or shadows in your piece. And this is going to give it more dimension, more depth, and make it look more real. In real life, there's highlights on items where the sun and or light source is coming from, and then you have your shadows and all of that. And it's really important that if you have a piece that you can do it with, I mean, not everything is going to work out, that you do it. So one of the simple ways that you can do it is if you have a mold like this that has these textures in it, right? You can pick your colors, and I'm going to use copper, and I'm going to use, I think it's coffee. And what I'm going to do is copper is going to be my main color. That's what color I'm coloring the resin. Now I'm taking the coffee, which is a darker brown, and I'm going into all, not into the crevices, because the crevices are going to be the points that stick out on this mold. So I want to do on the little, like where it comes up to almost like a point in the mold, and go over that. Now you can see I'm making a mess and I'm just going everywhere. But I want to hit those points because that is going to be the low point in our piece, where the darker, where your shadows would be. And I went all over the place because I don't mind a little bit of color shift and darkness in some areas of this. Wood isn't necessarily the same exact shade all on one piece, right? So you're going to have some color variation. And same thing with anything else. It's not just necessarily one straight color. So I don't mind if it's going all in different places. I don't want it to be too much because I just want it to be enough that it's going to change the overall look of it, but not so much that it's an eyesore, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing now is I brushed over everything that I kind of wanted to have colored, and I'm cleaning up some of the excess. Some of those spots where it's going to be the high point of the mold, where it's going to stand out a little bit. I don't necessarily want this dark color brown. Once I kind of get it to the place where I'm happy with it, I'm just going to take my big fluffy brush, go over it, and then we're going to flip this mold back the right way around. Okay, now, I'm just wiping off the bottom. It doesn't necessarily matter on this, but I don't want little dots of color either. Now I'm going to take my Let's Resin epoxy resin, which I've already mixed up. I've already ran through my bubble remover, and I'm going to add a little bit of this, I think it's sky blue mica powder, and I just put a little bit. These molds are teeny tiny, so I don't need a whole lot. In fact, honestly, this was too much. And I'm going to mix it up really well. And then we're going to hit the birds, spray a little bit of alcohol inside the molds. And that's just going to help with any bubbles getting stuck around all of those like 90-degree edges and or angles or whatever, you know what I mean? And let this resin kind of flow in there. I'm not pouring super fast. I am pouring on the slower side just to kind of let it find its own way and fill up so that I don't get stuck with a lot of bubbles. Now, after I do this, I am going to go around in the one with my dotting tool because I thought I had a huge air bubble. In fact, it wasn't. It was just the way that the mold kind of sits, and it's just straight silicone. But you really should, where the mold kind of overlaps on the top, like right around the edge of that hole, or anywhere that is coming from, like, say, the bird's tail, for instance, where it's coming from a down kind of lower, and then it comes up, and it doesn't come straight up, right? It kind of comes where that mold goes. You should pay attention to that and watch, because as the bubbles rise, they have a hard time finding that little hole where you're pouring the resin in. So as they rise, you can kind of look, especially on these molds where you can see through, and see if you see any bubbles sitting there. If so, you can get your silicone tool or dotting tool or whatever and kind of shift them to come up and get rid of them. All right, now, so for my nest, I put in a bunch of the copper mica powder. Now, I want to tone it down just a little bit, so I'm adding some of Let's Resin's ocean white pigment paste, just a little bit, mixing it up. It wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, so I'm going to add a little bit more. This is going to, because of its pigment paste, it's going to take some of the shine away from the mica. Now, had I done a lot more, I would lose that kind of mica look altogether, but I didn't need that much. It's also toning down my color. So the difference between the copper and that coffee color that I put on there is going to be more dramatic, and you're going to see it a little bit more. It's not going to blend in quite so well as if I had just gone straight copper, because it's very pigmented. Do you know what I mean? Of course, I didn't mix up quite enough, so I'm going to mix up a little bit more and try and get the colors as close to possible as I can to each other. It doesn't necessarily matter. I could have gone in with a whole nother brown and it could have added to the kind of color shift that not shift, but as in like shift from chameleon powders, but just the overall color that I'm looking for. It would have just added a little bit more. And this does turn out to be slightly darker. It's fine. It's not a huge deal. It's not a piece where like the color absolutely 100% needs to match. It's going to go in with that kind of look that I'm going for on this particular piece. So I've got my color all mixed up. Now I'm just gonna see, I'm kind of testing it, and I can see, you can't really tell on camera, but you can see there's a slight difference in color, but it's fine. It's not big enough to make a huge dramatic difference in it. It'll be okay. And then I'm gonna pop this into my Let's Resin curing machine, and I'll be back in 3 hours when this is done, and we're gonna kind of look at it and go over the next steps on how you can get those highlights and shadows in your pieces to make that big of a difference. And it really is super, super easy to do, and it doesn't take you don't have to have, I don't want to say a lot of skill or but you don't. It's just you kind of got to think of things like think of something in real life and where you would see the shadows forming at in a real object, and just translate that into your piece and how you think it should be. Okay, so now it's 3 hours later. These are all nice and cured, and it's time to get these out. These little birds are, the molds are so tiny, it's kind of hard to grip, but a little bit of alcohol in there and they pop out really, really easily. Now, they're nice. I didn't take the time out that I should have to pay attention to the bubbles raising. I got busy doing something else. I do actually want to make a quick mention. So, if you are using a curing machine, a heat mat, it doesn't matter what brand, what kind, any of that. But if you're using anything to speed up the curing process of your pieces, what you should do is give your piece about an hour. Okay, give it about an hour before you turn on your heat mat, before you turn on your curing machine, and let those bubbles raise. What you're doing if you don't is you're going to cure in a lot more bubbles into your pieces than would have happened if you let it cure naturally or if you waited that hour. You need to give it time for any of those air bubbles to come to the surface and pop, then throw on your machine and then let it cure fast. By that point, hopefully, unless you're mixing like a crazy person like I sometimes do, but hopefully you don't have many more bubbles and you're not going to cure them in because you're not giving it the time to naturally rise to the top like it would. All right, so my pieces are all done. Now I want to add a little bit of definition to these. For the birds, I just decided I just want to add a little bit of rhinestones to their tails just to give them a little bit more interest. And after I do this, then we're going to get into those highlights and lowlights with the bird's nest. And I'm going to show you how we're going to kind of play on it a little bit, just the shape of the mold on its own and the piece, just to kind of give it that look and show you how I'm going to do it in this piece, but other ways that you could potentially do it if you didn't want to do it the way that I'm doing it, so that you can kind of make it your own and all of that. Okay, so as you can see, I'm not going like completely crazy with the rhinestones on the bird. I just have a little bit of my diamond glaze in that little clear disposable cup, and I'm just going a couple of lines on the tails. A lot of birds they have really, really beautiful tails, and I just wanted to accent on something so they're not quite so plain. Like, they're pretty on their own, don't get me wrong, but I just want just a little bit. I'm not going to do anything else with the body or any of that, just a little bit of bling on those tails to kind of draw your eye to them, give it a little bit of glimmer of just beautifulness, and then that's it. That's it. I had thought about going around where the wings would be, and then I quickly changed my mind on that. I put a couple on there, and I just wasn't it just wasn't what I just couldn't see it. Like, I couldn't picture it. It wasn't working out the way that I had in my mind, so I was like, I scrapped that real fast, wiped it off before that glue had a chance to set, which it does set fairly quickly if you've never used diamond glaze before. You don't have a super long working time with it, which is why I only put like a tiny little bit in my pot each time and then use my dotting tool to kind of, go back and forth between putting a little bit of glue on the piece and then moving it around. Like, it doesn't go like solid super quick. It starts to like gel up and whatever, and you can still work with it then. But if you're taking your time like and going super crazy slow, you're not going to get much use out of it. So I would just recommend using little bits here and there at a time and then adding more glue to the bottom. The only thing that I do not like about the bottle that it comes in, and I have had a crazy issue with it, is the fact that the little squeeze, like the nozzle that it comes out of, is continuously like the cap that they give you, it doesn't keep the air out. So you continuously have dried glue that gets stuck in there, and it's just a whole thing, and it's a pain in the butt, but whatever. All right, so the birds are done. Now it's time to work on the details of this nest. So what I decided to do is, for those spots that I was telling you I was trying to get that darker coffee mica powder in, I took some of my gloss varnish and some dark brown extra fine glitter, and I am just taking my silicone tool and I am applying it in those areas, not super concentrated, not whatever, just however it appeals to me to do it. Like, in those areas where it may be set in a little bit deeper, maybe I'll go in deeper with that, because in real life that would be the darker spot. And then it would be dark along the edges, but kind of slightly lighten up a little bit. So it's not like super packed full of glitter in all of the areas, just in some, just to kind of make a difference in that. Now, if you did not want to go the route with glitter, you absolutely do not have to. You can go, if you have markers or paint pens that are in the color that you want to go in, you could do that. You could do acrylic paint and put that in, and just I personally would probably, if I was doing something like this, I would add a little bit of paint and a little bit of the gloss varnish together. I feel like it helps it stay on there better, and you don't have to worry about it kind of getting scratched off or peeling or anything like that as much as it would if it was just straight acrylic paint to it, unless you are somehow sealing it, which this, to do it this way would be, that would be a pain, but it could be done. You could also use UV resin if you wanted to and just color it. Again, you'd have to do it in super thin layers so that it would cure properly using a dark or opaque color. You could also use gloss varnish and mix some of your mica powders with it. I could have taken that brown or that coffee mica powder and still dusted it like I did before, but just to any areas that maybe didn't get quite as dark as I wanted it to, I could go over there with that gloss varnish and I could apply it that way. There's loads of different ways that you can do it to get the results that you're looking for and get those shadows in there. And you can do the same thing for your highlights as well, using the same things. You can use your paint, you can use your glitters, you could just do whatever, just obviously on a lighter scale, not in the areas that should be dark. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm just taking my gold paint pen, and all of those little areas that are kind of going up and down where it looks like the nest would be like attached or whatever, I'm going just just a tiny bit, just like dotting it on just in those areas. And then I'm going to go around some of the other bits too. And I'm going to apply some, but then quickly wipe off some of it. So it's just a very, very, very faint, like not even line really of the paint that's just kind of smoothed out. So you can't super tell, but you can, if that makes sense. It's nothing that's gonna be an eyesore and like, hey, I'm a highlight or hey, I'm a shadow, but you just want it to kind of blend so that it looks natural. But really, that's it. The only other thing that I'm going to do from this point on, after I'm done getting this done, is I'm going to take some E6000 glue and I am going to glue these guys to the top rim of this dish. Now you could totally fill it with something and set the birds in there if that's what you wanted to do. I chose, so this way I can use it as a bowl if I want to. I chose just to glue them on, use a little bit of painter's tape to kind of hold them in position, let it cure for the 24 hours, and that's it. Anyway, that's a wrap on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will see you guys on Tuesday in the next one. Love ya. Bye.
Together we belong. In every comment, right? You lift me to new heights. Your support, it's clear, gives me reason to cheer. Blue elephant crew, this one's up for you. You make dreams come true with everything you do. Each subscriber's heart playing a vital part. Videos we share, showing how much we care. Likes and